different background, David. Different background.
I know. Yours isn't. It's all got exactly the same background. How's it going?
Well, it's day 4. It's the evening of day 4. It's been really hard. I mean, no, I'm not going to moan about it because I'm honestly, loads of people are in such worse situation, and I haven't been. I mean, I'm a little bit unwell, but beyond that, I'm fine. No, it's been it's been a bit maddening, David. I'm not going to lie, and the fact that I'm not even halfway through is kind of boggling. I get out of here. Yeah. I get out of here. We're recording this on Saturday evening. I get out of here next Saturday morning, and I run.
My God!
I know. When you put it like that, it's kind of insane, isn't it?
That's insane.
Yeah.
And tell me about the practicalities of it. How is the Airbnb kind of people, the owners, about the situation?
Well, I hope they're not listening to, and I hope they're not listeners to Never Strays Far. It would be an extraordinary coincidence if they were.
It's possible. You're in West Flanders.
I do feel I'm in East Flanders, which might make a difference.
East Flanders.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. That's yeah. Should be safe.
Should be safe.
Yeah.
But I do feel that they might have been a bit more supportive. I mean, in some ways they've been great. So they have extended the stay by 3 days, but I'm paying for that. That's fine. I don't know. They haven't let me know the ramifications of the other guests who may or may not have been bunked off, and how long that booking might have been. So I feel for them slightly on that score, but I don't know if it's been that disruptive. On the other hand, they literally live 2 floors below me. They know I've come down with COVID, and I don't know if I was in that position. I might have just dropped a note through the thing or sent a WhatsApp saying, "Is there anything we can bring you?"
Nothing, huh?
Absolutely
not like a nice plate of lasagna or.
I mean, nothing. Nothing, or and not even the offer of anything.
You should go full Steve McQueen and just get get somebody to get on Amazon, get a tennis ball delivered and just sit on the floor and bounce
wall
it
ball.
against
Get a wall ball.
Yeah, just wall ball yourself. Just sitting on the floor.
But unfortunately, my landlord isn't the guy directly underneath me. There's another interloper. There's an innocent victim, sort of direct. Okay. So he's 2 floors down.
Collateral damage.
But listen, it's fine. My delivery arrived eventually. That stressed me out because I really would have been. I would have had to.
So how are you dealing with food then again? So you are getting food deliveries now?
Well, I got one late last night.
Do you have a kitchen?
Yeah, I've got a little kitchenette thing. It's fine. I mean, it's got some pots and pans. So I made a leek and potato soup today. And I got some fresh fruit delivered. I like fruit. I got some fresh fruit delivered. Late last night it arrived. So I actually for breakfast didn't have bread, which was nice. I couldn't have had bread anyway because I'd completely run out of bread. So I had some fresh fruit, and that felt like it did me a bit of good. It's more the psychological thing now that it's beginning to bite. I've done 3 relatively good days of writing though, which has been. Have you ever seen Escape to Alcatraz?
Yes.
You know how he has to make a great big hole in the wall with a hair clip or something? What is it? He's got some tiny little thing. He just scrapes away bit by bit. He kind of ferrets away the breeze block.
Can't remember.
With a little tiny pointy thing, and that's the stage I'm at with my book. Like, I wanted to generate all this exciting new material, but actually all I've had to do is go back to the material I've been gathering dust on the shelf. And at some point I have to do this anyway and kind of box it into shape. But man alive, now I've started, I suddenly realise quite how labyrinthine a process it is and how long it's going to take. And so at first I got terribly impatient with that, and only over the course of today and yesterday did I realise, actually, don't rush at it. It's kind of quality rather than quantity, and work slowly and diligently, and you'll get there in the end. But it's a bit like that with my writing at the moment.
It's lucky you got loads of time.
Well,
to go down.
What have you been up to? Because I literally have nothing to report except for that. So
yeah,
different background.
A different background. So, and this is probably not the best thing to be saying because we've cross the border into and not because we're allowed to do all this. I'm just saying for your mental health.
Yeah.
And with the family, we've gone to visit another family friend, and they have this amazing big. I say it's a kind of big old farmhouse on the side of a mountain in the foothills of the French Pyrenees that they've spent a few years working on. And they've got gîtes, beautiful like gîtes connected to it, and they've got kids the same age as ours, and they're English, Matt and Ali, and so
are they listeners? Do they listen to Never Strays Far?
No, they will do after this one, because I said I'd tell people about La Taillade, and we'll put it in the show notes, because this is a place that people must come to, and they kind of farm all the land around. They're using wood from the mountainside to do all the work here. I mean, it's very it's hyper sustainable. Wow, because that's what they believe.
Well, they actually farm it themselves. They do the farming themselves.
They do the farming. They've got animals here, and they do all the carpentry. They do they literally fell the trees and dry them out and do everything. It's pretty amazing.
Do you know what? Yeah. Years ago, sorry, carry on. Yeah, go on.
No, just saying. So we'll put it in the show notes, La Taillade, and it's definitely worth checking out because the cycling around here is amazing. In fact, footnote to that, Amélie-les-Bains, which is the nearest town, is where I did my first ever professional training camp.
So
and that was in 1997.
That was going to be my next question. Where can I relate this to in terms of Tour de France geography? Because actually, I think you spoke about that training camp in commentary during the Tour de France this year, didn't you?
You're right.
Was it the Andorra stage?
I did. Yeah, exactly. And this is the road that essentially comes out probably from that kind of West Pyrenees down towards the coast, back down towards Perpignan.
Yeah.
In fact, driving here today, they had all kind of the Tour de France kind of, as they do in the villages, kind of Tour de France little statues and different decorations were still up.
Yeah.
Quite permanent things actually, so it must come through here quite often. But yeah, this is the road essentially down to Perpignan from the Pyrenees, and they're up the side, one of the valleys.
Now that was you told some story about that first ever training camp was that with Cofidis or was it before Cofidis?
Cofidis with Maurizio Fondriest, and that was Tony Romigo and Maurizio Fondriest. That was, and where Lance, we'd been with Lance just before, but he didn't come to the training camp. He did our camp in Lille beforehand. But yeah, that was the old days. I mean, this just seems bonkers that we do training camps like that. And because I was driving through, and it makes me feel quite old. It also makes me realize how young I was, because it's a really French village, a small town, Amélie-les-Bains, and it was a really sort of French hotel we were staying in, and the food wasn't very good. And
so back in those days, obviously you just got what was on the menu. There was no,
I remember that was maybe the story I was telling. Maurizio Fondriest just wanted a salad and tomatoes, and he had to fight tooth and nail to get it. I can still remember he wanted a big plate of tomato. He always had this kind of plate of raw tomatoes salad before his meal. Of
course he did.
And he just had to fight tooth and nail to get it. And those are the days. So yeah, it's kind of weird driving through here now.
Yeah,
with Nicole and the three kids, and coming up to visit family friend. When 24 years ago, I was here as a young pro.
But isn't that the beauty of your sport? I've often felt this and felt very deeply envious of you guys in this regard, and this regard only, really, apart from the phenomenal money that you were paid, which would have been nice. But no, in this regard, that because your training ground is the public road, because your stadium is a mountain range, your lives will eventually, always, permanently and forever, you're condemned to crisscrossing with your past. You will cross paths with your past like this. And, that's not without meaning, is it? And that's kind of unique. If you had a professional basketball career behind you and you turned your back on the sport, you wouldn't accidentally end up in a basketball training ground, No.
I mean, you have the stadia, obviously, if you've been a football player or a basketball player. But I think for us, it's much more personal, and the stories are very, personal, because stadia, you share it with people, and they're obviously kind of on an infinite loop, apart from the great performances. But if I go through Font-Romeu, I can see the old hotel where I jumped off and broke my foot in half. I can come through here and remember when I was here with Maurizio Fondrius, when he was mentoring me, there are dozens and dozens of places in Spain and France and Belgium and Italy and even Switzerland, where you occasionally, and you know what I'm like sometimes.
Oh, you're hopeless.
We're on the road.
You're hopeless.
Yeah.
But what's really interesting about you is you are hopeless because you're even worse at kind of, especially in the Alps. You and I get horribly lost in the Alps. We never know where we are in the Alps. But I always imagined that you would understand. But you're simultaneously hopeless, but also you're amazing because sometimes, every now and again, you'll be triggered into completely remembering everything, and you'll suddenly go, "Oh my God, I remember this," and then it'll all be in high definition to you.
Yeah, it's really weird because I'll go down roads and we'll be in the car and say, "I know this road. I've raced this road," and even if I've done it once, and especially if it's been a time trial or a heated race or a training camp where we're doing it repetitively, it's ingrained. And it just flashes back, and it's the kind of the Proustian Madeleine moment.
It is, and
where all of a sudden you have this absolute flashback in time, and because normally they were such strong emotional points and intense points, all of a sudden they haven't gone. They've been dormant.
Yeah,
and it's the visual triggers. It's a piece of road. It's a building. It's just a vista, and you're like, oh, whoa, yeah, I've raced here. And then you have to start putting the pieces together. And so you're right. It's really fascinating. And that's, as you say, it's a great privilege because I often use the term, I like the term ghosts of the past. And you kind of I can see many ghosts of my past and going through these places. And it's like, imagine if that kid knew 24 years later would be driving through here with his wife and 3 kids, kind of with everything that had gone on ahead.
Where do you stand on that? Just generally, I mean, it's slightly straying away from the cycling for a change. Kind of picking over the bones of your past and actually looking back now that you've got a few decades under your belt, David, and you're, I wouldn't say catching me up, but you're almost in the same bracket. Where do you feel? It's like a good few years ago, a long time ago, I went back to the house I'd kind of grown up in until I was about 9. And I was quite looking forward to it. I took the kids there when they were quite little as well. I don't know why I did that. They wouldn't have been interested, but they came along as well. And actually, I kind of found the thing upsetting. And I didn't vow never to come back. I just knew I didn't want to go back. And I have kind of extended that across the piece, really. I don't really like going back to places that meant a lot at the time. And where I live right now means the world to me. Not necessarily my Airbnb in Nineveh, but where I live in London means the world to me.
Your other home.
My second home, if you like. But already I feel kind of horrified that one day I probably won't be living there, and that I will remember, because this is the neck of the woods I raised a family. And that it'll become a memory, and it'll be a place to maybe revisit in a ghostly fashion. And I'm not sure I'll ever want to do that. So I'm kind of clinging on to the reality of it while it's there and dreading its unreality, if that makes sense. A bit like when you get those very warm days in Britain in early October, and you go, and it's 24 degrees and sunny, and you go, this is lovely, but you can't really enjoy it because it's just a trick and right round the corner, Is that just me? Do you know what I'm getting at there?
Well, no, I do, and I'm going to use a really terrible kind of analogy, but it's very bang on. Is when I was ambassador for Maserati. I used to get met at airports, and they'd have somebody waiting there with a key to a car.
They did. They literally did. And you've fallen a long way in a very short space of time.
I've fallen a long way. But I can remember never truly enjoying it because I knew it wouldn't last.
That's it. That is it. That is exactly it.
Yeah.
That's exactly it.
I was like, one day this is never going to... So you're in the euphoria of the moment, and it's amazing, but at the same time there's a melancholic air to it because this isn't going to be forever.
It's false.
It's false.
And temporary.
But going back to, I think the point of what you were saying, I suppose for me it's different is... because I've lived in 6 different countries and always bounced around kind of my life is just a bunch of vignettes in many ways. And I suppose I'm the closest to it, like you are with your home and Lewis.
I was going to say, you've been in Girona. You've been in Girona a long time now.
Yeah. So now it's kind of, and that's been a deliberate move and decision to instill that, is to create. And so for me, it's very much, there's no melancholy to it in Girona, because it's been a good term. We've managed to push longer than anybody else there, and we will be there for a significant longer period of time. And if we get through another 10, 15 years, then the kids will have grown up in the same place their journey to young adulthood, which was always the target with that one. But I'm a romantic. I love going back and visiting places and seeing.
Do you?
It fills me with joy when you go back. I do. I kind of like it. I think it's good. It allows you to enjoy the moment more and appreciate it. I mean, let's face it. We don't go back to places where we had a bad time. That would be a grave error. But so if you go through somewhere and you got bad memories, you tend not to dwell on it.
Yeah.
And often, actually, the very nature of the human nature at its very core, we're very good at not building stories around bad memories.
Yeah.
And kind of we try to block them out.
Yeah.
So I think it's actually normal. I'm a big fan of going and revisiting places. Often
you don't find
you go back. Often you go.
You don't find that it's a kind of an affront that your memories have stayed where they are. Almost by definition, they've kind of been locked in time. That's the point of a memory. And yet the reality of the place has moved on, so that you can go back to a house that you once lived in, and it's been sold and bought 3 times, and someone's built a you know what I mean? It's been altered by people other than you, and that is kind of, that brings you up cold, doesn't it? Or it does me. It kind of.
I suppose Hong Kong cured me of that, because living in Hong Kong when I did in the 1990s, from early 1990s to mid 1990s, and it was magical. We lived in went to school in Kowloon, and also out in Sai Kung, where it was still a fishing village and a beautiful place. And then I left in 95, and then every year I went back. But even while I was there, they were building. It used to just be a single B road down to where we lived.
Yeah, the pace of change.
When I first got
unreal,
there.
Yeah.
And then while I was there, they built like a motorway down there, and I used to mountain bike down that as they were building it, because it was empty and building ramps. And then that turned into this, and then the skyscrapers where that village once was. Yeah. And you become, in a way, now go to Hong Kong, and at first it's kind of shocking, and it's a little bit sad, because it's just becomes a metropolis everywhere, and that's very much China. But then at the same time, you think, how lucky were we to have lived there when it was small and quiet. And it's just been eradicated, like literally just doesn't exist anymore. Yeah. And so I think that puts a bit of perspective, because I think that's what it's like over there. And it does. So I think there is that melancholic air, because sometimes you realize all that's left is what's in your head. The actual material objects have gone.
Yeah.
And the actual, but I think the word melancholic's the best, because it's not sad. It's just, oh wow, yeah, it's moved on. It's going to move, and that's the kind of the existential. As long as you don't turn it into an existential crisis, I think it's an existential benefit, because you realize how important it is to enjoy the moment. I mean, think about where you are now. This place is going to be embedded in your head now.
Yeah.
But unfortunately, you're never going to know what it looks like from the outside. It's going to be
it's true, huh?
It's going to haunt you.
It's true, because I have to leave so early next Saturday morning to catch my train home from Brussels that I'm going to leave before daylight. And I arrived in the darkness as well, so I've now literally never seen it. This is like an anthropological experiment. Mikkel would love this. It's like, can a place mean anything if you've never actually seen it? There's a tree falling in a wood, etc. Perhaps. So I mean, maybe that's just one of my slightly dark and unpopular opinions or views that I obviously seem to be breeding in my isolation here. The other one being, just to return it to cycling, David, the other one being cyclocross. So as I alluded to in my previous pods, my ambition had been to go to the Boom Super Prestige meeting today to watch the cyclocross, and instead I was restricted.
That would have That would have been amazing because that was going to be a pure. Well, first time Never Stray's file would be officially accredited.
I know, it would have been a landmark moment. Official media.
That would have been a pivotal
Excuse
moment.
me, I'm with the media.
Official media.
I'm with the media. Could you...
You could have walked around.
Yeah.
You could have walked around with your microphone. You should have got a little satchel to hold your recording device in that was attached to your belt.
There might have been a little mixed zone at the end where I could have gone to, Wout van Aert and...
you could have done...
with my headphones on, like this, like you're seeing me on the Zoom call. Like Wout, just a word for Never Stray's far. Wout.
he's desperately trying to look at your press pass. That kind of sometimes when,
can I be bothered
when you
with
do
that?
that, you'll see them trying to. Who is this?
Looks like an internet guy.
Who you? What? Looks like an internet guy. Oh, not an internet guy.
He's an internet guy. He's obviously on his own. He's he's got headphones on, which is always a sign. He's a vidiot. But there's lots of internet guys, and I don't mean to be dismissive of internet guys because why not? They're gonna.
They've done pretty well, internet guys.
Absolutely, yes, exactly. And also, we're all dead. Our medium is dead, so they're all going to take over the world.
Yeah,
but there are quite a lot of internet guys in cycling, which are quite lovely.
So you did the next best thing and watched it on Belgian TV.
But it wasn't really the next best thing because, like all these things, to be there is everything, I suspect, with cyclocross. We were talking about it, how we imagined it being, smell the mud and all that sort of thing. And by the way, this is a one-off Never Stray's farmyard, isn't it? It's just to reflect the mud that I would have been experiencing. And Vitor's done some great artwork for this. But just to smelt the mud and felt the rain and, drunk the Belgian beer and listen to the Belgian pop and all that would have been cool. I would have enjoyed that. Maybe not every weekend, but once in my life I would have liked that.
You could have bought some merch.
I would have definitely bought some merch, David. Some Boom Super Prestige.
There would have been some amazing merch.
Yeah. And so, but it didn't happen. So I did have to watch it. I couldn't even watch it on Belgian TV, which really disappointed me. So in the end, I had to...
Not on the national channels?
The landlord's given me a telly so furiously complicated, I didn't even know how to turn it on. And then on my laptop, I couldn't figure out... just couldn't figure out. There was one paper, and then it wouldn't accept my card and whatever. So I had to watch it on... that sounds very rude. I listened to Martin McDonald's commentary on Eurosport GCN, which is extremely good and very informative. But I would have just because I'm in Flanders, I would have preferred to watched it in Flemish, obviously. Get a different twist on it. So that was my experience sitting on the couch watching both the men's and the women's race. And this, David, was my little bit of reportage. Well, David, I have finally managed to get some cyclocross on my laptop, and I'm watching the women's elite race, and I'm watching Lucinda Brandt, who just had to hop off her bike. This is rather overstretching my understanding of cyclocross at a point which looked like she didn't really want to. There's a lone leader off the front. It's the Dutch rider Inge van der Heijden. Everyone is standing, watching on, wearing face masks with umbrellas because it is pouring with rain in Belgium today. It has been all day. Brand is there now. She's actually so steep where she is that she's barely walking, using the barriers now just to get across to Van der Heijden. Those two are together now at the front with a 5-6 second lead. Brandt and Van der Heijden now. The camera's caught up with them. So if Brandt got a bike change there, which he did, it didn't cost her any time, and she's still just in front of Van der Heijden. So it looks to me like Lucinda Brandt is the strongest of the riders. She's the world champion, for heaven's sake, but is the strongest of the riders out there at the moment. And it looks to me like Van der Heijden is just struggling to stay on her wheel at the moment. That's my analysis. But it's often the way in cyclocross. My brief and totally superficial understanding of cyclocross is it's a trial of strength, isn't it? So the strongest rider gets away, and we'll see. And there you go. So Lucinda Brandt is going to take the women's race. Well, the riders of the men's race are just lining up now. The weird thing is the favourites start at the front, which I kind of get it, but and I guess because Pidcock and Van Aert are just making their starts, looks like they'll have to try and work their way up through the field. They're about to start. I'm going to have to do some commentary now as they head. The lights go green, just like in a Formula One race, and all hurtling down this bit of tarmac road. I think there's a left-hander that they're coming to. Looks like Lars van der Haar, the European champion, along with Quentin Hermans, are going to go first and second around that first bend. And out into the mud. Oh, brilliant. One or two of them just at the bottom of a really muddy hill. Someone loses their grip, goes down, and then there's... because the bunch is still quite closely packed. None of them can avoid them. They just slap into them one by one. Made me laugh. 8.5 minutes into this race, he's absolutely flying, Pidcock. He's running second at the moment with Van Aert on his wheel. So the big kind of showdown between the two stars that everyone was looking forward to looks like it's about to happen. Oh, Van Aert's just smashing it off the front now. Big hill. Don't know what they call them. There's probably a technical word in cyclocross. Some sort of mound, muddy mound. He just... took that opportunity to absolutely smash it up the hill, and he's put gap now into everybody else. So big move. Whoa, Toon Aerts has properly just slid in the mud on his arse. Oh, it nearly takes that Pidcock as well, but that was, yeah. He was running second at the time. Van Aert was had just gone clear of him again, and properly slapped down on his bum, basically in the mud. Well, this is over, isn't it? Wout van Aert, lap 3 of 7. No one else is in sight. And this is my slight problem with cyclocross. Because while they're all bunched and it's all frenetic, it's great fun. But then when it all stretches out and just becomes individual riders, the gaps seem to only grow, really. Very seldom have I seen gaps kind of notably closing. So... kind of self-definingly the strongest ride-off. And once you've seen how muddy it is, I don't know. I just don't know how interesting it is after that. And the other thing is that these guys are amazing riders. I mean, their bike handling is incredible. Obviously, their strength is just phenomenal. They are amazing. And yet, somehow, the discipline in which they have chosen to excel and in which they're brilliant in, it makes them look ungainly and slow. And they're anything but either of those things. So Tom Pidcock's crashed a couple of times and he's been shaking his head, and he's I think it's been quite a tough comeback to cyclocross for him, from what I gather. Wout van Aert waves his right hand in the air and pats his bike as if it were a racehorse, and wins the Boom Super Prestige by 1,000,000 miles. Absolutely no one near him. Just phenomenal.
A performance, what a victory.
So, convincing victories for the world champion Lucinda Brandt, and a stunning sort of show of force from Wout van Aert, who just... his patience lasted about 10 minutes into the race. And as you know, cyclocross races for men last an hour. And he just tore off the front on this, I don't know what you call them in cyclocross, this ramp, this muddy hillock, which there must be a word for that. I'm sure there's a word. But he was...
berg or...
Yeah, it's not a berg. It's a thing. But he was the only one, and the mud was so thick, he was the only one who, when he decided to go, he was just making a point. He rode up it, and everyone else got off and ran.
That's what they do.
Everyone else got up and ran.
Yeah.
3/4 of the way up. None of them could carry on riding. They were all going so slowly they had to stop running. Van Aert was the only person who managed to ride up it first time around. And after that, it was done. And in the case of the women's race, Lucinda Brandt had to catch the lone leader, drop the lone leader, and then after that, it was done. And so I posted, well, I sent a message to you, and then I posted on Twitter how, and I think I might have said this before on the pod, how I really want to like cyclocross because I dig it, and I get why people love it, and I get why
You dig it because you're hip and cool, Ned. You dig it.
Dig is a really terrible word that belongs to many generations, even older than mine. So I kind of slightly regret having used it, particularly because you just picked up on it. I understand it. And I do see that it must be great fun to have a go at. I do genuinely get that. It must be funny, actually, and a great deal of suffering, but also a lot of fun. And I completely understand because we talk about it all the time, don't we? In commentary, the way it transfers onto road racing. I understand these athletes are phenomenal physical specimens, and what they do is opening up all sorts of new possibilities on the road, I think. And they're very skillful. The way they stay upright. I think if you and I ever tried it, we'd be on our asses within seconds, obviously. So there's a lot of skill that goes on. But with all these incredible attributes, all cyclocross seems to do is make them look slow and awkward. And for that reason, I can't love it. I just think that, well, it's just making a fool out of them.
Yeah. I don't think I've never really watched it apart from the 1980s Grandstand Saturday BBC TV.
Oh, you really haven't watched it then? No.
No. I mean, I watched occasional snippets on Twitter and stuff, and I guess they get the highlights. Apart from that video you sent to me, the stair shot from, which was very good.
The Masters,
which I thought was fantastic.
Yeah.
The Masters.
Yeah.
Yeah, I suppose. I mean, I think it's one of those ones where you have to be there, and it's more of an appreciation of the skills. I tell you what, I did see today, this morning when I was checking social media. It looks like old little Tom Pidcock's got a pretty amazing truck with Ineos Grenadiers.
What, like
it's
actual
like
truck?
In classic fashion,
What?
Like his own truck with him all on the side.
Oh, what? Like a cyclocross Grenadier thing?
Oh, let's check it out. I'll try and find it and send it to you. It's it looks like he's got his own bus.
And why do I think most of the other, apart from, like, obviously there are a few big stars there on lots of money, but a lot of those riders probably turn up in their own Ford Mondeos, and
I feel like that, and they warm up by sitting on the bonnet. I don't think it's like that anymore.
No, it probably is.
Of the recent,
warm up by sitting on the bonnet.
engines running, keep it warm, sit on there. But I think.
Wait, is that a thing? Have you done that?
I've done that. Yeah,
I've never seen riders do that before. That's amazing.
Yeah, it's really cool. Just sitting there, it's like, oh, stay warm. That's probably just laziness, but it's better than actually riding. But yeah, so I need to look more into it.
Yeah,
but I think
I posted my slight disillusion with it. I mean, not with it, but with the experience of viewing it. I think that's fundamentally that's the point. Like, is this a television sport that can grow? Has it got real potential to captivate new audiences? And I have my doubts, because for a number of reasons. One is this aesthetic thing of like, oh wow, that's muddy, but that you can make that realization, and that realization lasts about 30 seconds before you go, yeah, it's muddy. This makes it really difficult for the riders to do what they're really good at.
Yeah. Or oh, that's really sandy.
Or that's really sandy. Or that's really steep. Or oh, he's fallen off.
It's jumps.
But the falls are kind of like without that horrible jeopardy of falling on the road at high speed. They're kind of comedy falls, as you heard from the report I did. They're kind of like makes you giggle. It's slapstick stuff. Which is good.
Buster Keaton on a bike.
Which is good, because broken bones aren't a great thing. But to be brutally honest, one of the kind of like things that keeps you watching road racing when not much is happening is that sense of at any point right now it might all go down, as it did on the and I'm afraid that's just true about road racing. But so a lot of people came to the defense of cyclocross on my Twitter feed, which is fine. But most of those people defending it were people who do it.
The hard
and that's fine, and that's fine. But they kind of misses the point. I'm not talking about doing it. I'm talking about watching it. Doing it, absolutely fine.
As a professional watcher,
literally a professional watcher. And someone else made a very good point to me, saying I can't remember who it was on Twitter, but if you're listening to this, you made a very good point that I agree with. One of the reasons I struggle with it, they said, was that it's like a road race, but in reverse. So all the drama of the outcome is packed into the first few minutes. And then after that, it settles down, and then the whole elastic stretches, and the outcome is kind of entirely predictable. So Wout van Aert, I didn't even realise, slapped down in the final lap today, but still had so much time that he just got up and kind of, it was all done a long time before that. So there we go. I don't mean to be down on cycling, because I think it's wonderful and really old and venerable, and I hope it continues and thrives. All I'm saying is, I think that...
Best of luck to them.
I think it's a little bit... Crack on.
I hope it continues and thrives. Best of luck to you guys. Well done on cyclocross.
Yeah,
I'm with you. It's good. No, I think it's definitely it's the reason cyclocross exists like it does, as one of those satellites of cycling.
Very important.
It
But
isn't.
it's not. But it's more than that, isn't it? Because it is very important, and I do think it has. I do think that the new generation of riders are learning the lessons being set by Van der Poel and Van Aert and Pidcock. About, and they don't even have to do cyclocross themselves as a discipline to absorb the lessons from cyclocross that those guys are teaching the road racers. And I think it's really significant. But it's a bit muddy.
Ned, you're
My work
I
of
haven't had a
fiction.
chance to listen to your. Yeah, I haven't had a chance to listen to
Well,
it, so I can listen to it now.
Well,
or
No, well, don't.
we can do it a couple of
Well,
days.
no, don't worry. We'll just. I don't know how to play this really. So it's a fascinating.
Why don't you? But we could go out on it, and then the next pod I can then
I think
review it.
that's a really good idea. So, but I need to set some context.
Let's do that.
Like it's a little bit
Yeah.
to do with writing and self-isolation and all this kind of thing. You know, it is. Do you ever, with your laptop or your computer, David, at home, do you ever suddenly go, oh God, it's chaos. There's all sorts of folders and files and I don't know where anything is anymore. And also the computer will give you the impression of working faster and better if you do two things to it. One is with an alcohol wipe, you wipe it, of the keys and everything on the screen. That makes it work faster. You agree with that? And also, if you tidy up your desktop so there are literally only a couple of folders left on it, and maybe refresh and give yourself a new, what do you call it, background image to your desktop, that also will make your computer work faster, right? It's just, it gives you that impression. So I sat down and kind of did the whole cracking your knuckles thing and 10 days on my own, got to sort out the writing thing, start banging this book into shape in the fashion of Clint Eastwood from Escape from Alcatraz. Escaping to Alcatraz would be absolutely stupid. Although that's kind of what I've done by escaping to Nineveh, only to end up in prison.
You have escaped to Alcatraz.
Yeah, I have escaped to Nineveh. Anyway, so I did all that, and then I thought I'll just tidy up my computer because there's all sorts of going. And then I've got this one little folder on my Dropbox thing that ludicrously just says writing, and then it's got lots of subsets and it says books, and it goes right back to how I won the yellow jumper, and it's got all the bit. And there are about 4 or 5 books that I thought about developing as ideas and never came to much. 1 or 2 in particular, I've written tens of thousands of words. But there's other little folders full of stuff that I just didn't know what I was ever going to do with it. And I've discovered one little folder and opened it up, and it had 2 bits of writing in it. And I loosely remembered that I went on a holiday in Madeira a couple of years ago in the middle of winter in February. And Kath and I stayed in the Hotel Monte Carlo, and every evening we'd sit out on the terrace, having gone and eaten in town. We'd walk back up the hill to the Hotel Monte Carlo, sit out on the terrace, and it was cold by then, and they'd give us thick blankets. And we'd have a cup of tea and look out over the kind of skyline of, what's the capital of Madeira? Funchal. And bit by bit, Kath and I developed this, as we have the habit of doing, this kind of fictional, this piece of fiction in our heads, this kind of story set in wherever we are. And I can't really remember the details of it, but one character from this story was going to be an astrophysicist from Funchal, from Madeira, and the other character was going to be an astrophysicist from the southern steppes of the Soviet Union near the Mongolian border, called Piotr. And they were somehow going to meet. They were somehow going to meet in a tunnel in Madeira. And beyond that, I can't really remember what the story was. The Portuguese character was quite developed, and maybe I'll have a look at the other bit of writing and see. Well, it depends how this goes down. see what that story was all about.
A/B testing.
But I discovered this bit of writing that I must have done either when we were in Madeira, or immediately having returned from Madeira, or even on the flight on the way back from Madeira, which is a 3.5-hour flight, at least. So I think I might have done it on the flight on the way back, closed my laptop and completely forgotten about it until I purged my desktop and found this mysterious bit of writing about this astrophysicist driving on his way to work through the Soviet Union and remembering his childhood. And we'll play out with that because David hasn't listened to it yet. And if you've got any comments about that or any thoughts about them, we'll pick it up next time. In the meantime, you can always email us on, here's the jingle,
hiwtyj@gmail.com.
And David, here is the story of Piotr. And on this note, I'll bid you goodbye. I hope you have a lovely weekend, and I'll speak to you next week. When he had reached the age of 7, he felt like he had seen it all. In fact, he had only really seen the dark wooden walls of his grandmother's dacha, the waxy surface of the lake oscillating with a white scum near the shore, the inside of his bedroom and the small kitchen of his parents' apartment near the railway station, the schoolroom, with its bleak palette of colours and mellow, marshy smells of chalk and children, and assorted other buildings, such as the church on the corner of the big avenue with the cars parked outside, the vet's where they had taken the old animal to be killed gently and quickly, and the butcher who had often picked him up and cast him jokingly towards the dumb metal mouth of the mincer. "I'll turn you into sausage meat, so I will." Then his mother had laughed along. "I think he believes you. Do put him down." Yet he felt as if he had scoped out the world, and that not much remained to be discovered. Perhaps, he wondered idly, there were other white-plastered churches, other wheezing old dogs, other wiry, grizzled butchers wiping bloodied hands on aprons and reaching for a sweet hidden in the pocket. But if such things existed over the horizon, they were surely only faint echoes of those he saw before him, copies, facsimiles. His head tilted to one side, he fixed an unfocused gaze ahead of him on the road to the distant point where the road's ribbon narrowed to meet a featureless horizon. The windscreen was livid with bright specks, and the dashboard dusty, rising and falling like the prow of a liner cutting a leisurely pace through calm seas. A morning sun peered uninterestedly from beneath a dirty cloud, filling his car with sudden, indifferent winter light. Piotr roused himself, pulling himself upright in his seat and shifting his weight. He raised a hand and slapped down the sunshade, missing at the first attempt and pouring at the air. But then a line of shadow fell sharply across his eyes as the sun disappeared from view. Without moving his gaze from the distant meeting of road and sky, and with sudden violence, his other hand raised a fist and brought it down heavily on the middle of the dashboard. For a few seconds a rattle stopped. Then it started again more insistently. From his position on top of the small circular table his mother had moved into his room one Christmas, he had just about been able to keep an eye on everything beneath him. The movement of troops heading stealthily towards the front line, where they disappeared into the dark charnel house under the bed to confront whatever fate awaited them. He noted with satisfaction the quiet industry of the figures in the supply chain, forming a link between the toy box in the corner and the lower shelves of the bookcase, cleared for storage, moving and replenishing stocks of fuel, food, and ammunition. He could see from his perch, high above them, if someone was on the take or slacking on the job. He saw such minor transgressions, but took a sympathetic if world-weary view and rarely intervened. After all, God alone knew what horrors they had faced. Many of these men had themselves served in the darkness, and emerged from battle, reluctant to tell what they had seen. He owed them at least some respect. He even knew that there were small corners of his empire that wilfully eluded his attention. He knew the territory had its dark zones, like the gulf between the skirting board and the heavy chest of drawers which his mother supplied every third day with crisply folded T-shirts, underpants and jumpers. The lamp's weak light could not reach this little enclave, and under the bedside table, where he could still imagine the outline of the old dog circling 3 times with a clatter of nails on wood before curling up. He was suspicious of this space, declaring it to be a no-go territory gone to waste. Or, still more worryingly, on top of the tall wardrobe he suspected that an entire company had gone rogue and were surviving like wild animals, launching invisible, undetectable nighttime raids just to gather supplies and survive. It was an inevitable consequence of the arena of human strife that lay before him. He understood that some would break rank. Let them, but keep an eye on their numbers.